Media as a catalyst for natural resource management. The role of the journalist as a knowledge broker. So, one of the speakers giving the solidarity message was very kind enough to define what a journalist was. Because it is not by carrying a microphone and a camera that makes you a journalist. There's far more to it, but I'll come to that. So what I want to do is unpack that topic. Topic again, media as a catalyst for natural resource management. The role of the journalist as a knowledge broker. And that fits into the theme, I hope. So when we talk about natural resources or natural capital, you're talking about everything that surrounds us, our environment, our ecosystems, the forests, the hydrocarbons that are under the sea and under our soil, the gold that we have. But the biggest natural capital any country has is tied to its human capital. And I was very glad somebody made reference to the fact that by our actions on the environment, we are damaging that human capital. We have mortgaged the lives of our children because of the environmental impact our so-called development agenda has taken us. And you're not talking about the last 2 years, 4 years, we're talking about the last 100 years. So when we have a case of malformed babies coming from the mining areas, when we are aware that women are infertile, that the spermatozoa of men from that area, they don't swim forward, they swim sideways or backwards. When we take one Kita school boy, and there are more than 100 pieces of microplastic in the stomach of that Kita school boy, which we dry and we smoke and we grind everything and put it in to make shito, and we eat it happily. All of these release toxins into our bodies. So the mortgaging of our future through the damage to the natural capital of this country is immense. So that is the natural capital. Now you come to natural resource management or the governance of the natural resources. That is completely different. You can manage a resource by saying it is there, I will not touch it. That is your form of management. You can manage a resource of using it by replacing it, like forests. You can manage a resource like a mineral by extracting it. But you know that you cannot have sustainable mining, because once the resource is out, it's gone. So we have to know that there are issues when it comes to how we manage our resources. Traditionally, it was our leaders, elders, chiefs who managed the natural resources. They gave permissions. In our constitution, it says that all lands are vested in the president. And further on it goes on about the citizens' duty. So we have to govern our natural resources effectively. And that there was a time we had an organization called NREG, the National Resource and Environment Governance Group, chaired by the Vice President, who oversaw several ministries to make sure that we governed our natural resources properly. So I'll come to the next word in that topic, media. We define journalist already. But if the journalist is the head with the eyes and the ears to capture information, it is the sub-editor who is the neck. No matter how good your report is, if the sub-editor decides to turn his head this way, sorry, your hard work for nothing. So when you're talking about media, we have to go beyond the journalist. We have to go through all layers. Now we have something known as new media. New media is the YouTubes, the TikToks, all the social media. And again, one of the people giving the solidarity message referred to trained journalists. A lot of these people who are on these social media are untrained. They are untrained to the state that they cannot pluck coconut. They have no basis. They are publicity seekers. For them, the messenger is more important than the message. And we have to be very careful we don't go down the route of the social media, viral hits and so forth, because then we move away from the substance into the recording. So this proliferation of untrained, I can't call them journalists. What do you call it? They're not citizen journalists. Citizen journalists are responsible. I'm talking about those irresponsible people who can just, Twitter, tweet, twerk, whatever, anything. So that responsibility of what I would call real media to keep us on track is so vital and so important. Now the other word in my title is knowledge broker. And this has been referred to several times. The role of a journalist is to be a knowledge broker. Somebody who can transform information from just mere information beyond knowledge and improve the use of knowledge in decision making. A lot of the time that involves what is known as co-production of knowledge. You are working with somebody, and you cannot work with somebody in an ad hoc manner. It has to be proactive. You have to reach out to people. Because at the end of the day, again, somebody uses this word, transformation. We want a media that will help this country transform in such a way that the information can be used to facilitate innovation. The last word that I would like to define in that title, and again, I repeat it for the third time and the last time, media as a catalyst for natural resource management, the role of the journalist as a knowledge broker. The last word I'm going to unpack is catalyst. A catalyst. A catalyst is something that you add to a reaction, chemical reaction, that speeds up the reaction but returns to its original form. So you add a catalyst to an experiment or some process, it makes the process faster. By the time it's finished, the catalyst is there as original. The media journalist is not supposed to add too much color to the report. You should be reporting as far as possible based on the facts, the evidence that you have. And you do not add your personal perceptions, understandings or misunderstandings to the report in such a way that will confuse your reader or your listener. I hope I've said something, is it correct? I'm now retired, so I can come and do some small part-time. Okay, so that I've sort of unpacked the title. So when you look at the context where we are operating from, we have defined 9 planetary boundaries, including water, climate change, biodiversity. These are planetary boundaries that we are approaching the limits of what the Earth can sustain. And once we pass those planetary boundaries, we cross what is known as a tipping point. A tipping point is where you have an action and you can no longer recover from that action. So the tipping point comes from the concept of what is a seesaw up and down. If it's in balance, it can manipulate up and down around an equilibrium. If it goes too far down, for example, what's the lady's name? Pamela, esteemed president of this Afro Senior Center for. If she's sitting on one side of the seesaw and I sit on the other side, there's no way she'll come down. And we are reaching those limits where once we cross, we cannot recover, we cannot restore. I tell my students that if they don't have kids and they want kids, they better hurry up. Because there's amount of contaminants, amount of pollution that we are putting in the environment. You better have them now than later. Because by 2030, if you are planning for your kids then, I don't know how long they're going to survive. We have black carbon from burning wood and charcoal in the fetal heart of babies in the womb. That means the mother has inhaled it, it has gone through the lungs, entered the blood, entered the placenta, entered the child's blood, then ended up in the heart of the child. It is everywhere. We don't really appreciate, even scientists, what the long-term chronic effects of some of these things will be. Me, I'm grown. I'm heading only one direction. We are all heading that direction, but some are ahead of others. I'm ahead of you. So I don't have to worry about AU Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Because at that time, I wouldn't need that Africa. I'm long gone. Anyway, so when you look at the SDGs, water for all, sanitation for all, you realize that they are aspirational. They are aspirational because it is impossible to get water for all without affecting, let's say, food. So there will always be trade-offs. There will always be trade-offs, things that you want but you can't get. So it's the question, do I buy a house or do I buy a car? If I buy a Mercedes, that means I'll live in a kiosk. But if I build a mansion, that means I'll be using Uber for the rest of my life. So you have to decide where you want to go. And this is where journalists, you can come in and help this nation understand what we want. So the question is, what does this mean for Ghana? And unless we can get that understanding from the grassroots, we will always be led by people who have no fear of climate change. Because they are from their air-conditioned house, to the air-conditioned car, to the air-conditioned office. They don't care if our crowd weather is 35 degrees. They don't feel it. For me, I would say it is the role of the journalist to capture that understanding from the people on the ground on what these things mean. There's a house in Jowolo, very beautiful house, but it's a flood-prone area. So what has the man done? He's built his wall, he's built a ramp, so he can drive up into his house. The flooding doesn't affect him, but he has the money to do that. The people around don't. And remember, by the fact that some of the flood water doesn't enter his house, it means the flood water enters somebody else's house. So there's another big issue there. But part of it is our own fault. So right now, as we are speaking, you know there's a lot of erosion and Bilifi at Pambros. The 23 houses were washed away and so forth. But there's a town there called Tetigu, near the bridge. As I speak now, you can go to a flooded area, you see 4 bamboo poles sticking out of the water. You think it's a fishing trap? No. It's a plot that is being sold under the water. So a lot of the problems emanate from ourselves. And it is the role of the real media to highlight some of these issues and problems in such a way that it doesn't affect the next generation. I believe they call it the 4th estate of government. You have such a vital role in making sure the right message gets out to the right people at the right time. So another challenge is that there are very few journalists who are committed to a particular topic, and a topic like natural resource management. They have to follow where the, excuse me to say, the solidarity road takes you. So if solidarity is taking you in this direction, you follow the solidarity. Because we also know that a lot of the publishers and owners of the private media hardly pay enough for a chicken to survive. And you have to survive. We also have lack of specialist knowledge. I've been an environmental scientist for 30 plus years, almost 40 years. I consider myself a student. I'm a student still, because every day I have to learn something new. So if you're going to report accurately, you need that very deep, committed interest. We also have the problem of lack of information on the environment. And often it's a two-headed problem. One is that the data is not there because the people who should be funding the data collection don't fund it. The second is that many of the experts, in quotes, don't want to talk to journalists. There are reasons for that, but I believe there's another session after this where this audience can probe and give examples of when people don't want to speak. So the consequences of those challenges, you have little information in public domain. In fact, a lot of the statistics you find quoted in government press releases, you watch them. Half the data is coming from international organizations. It's not generated locally. You have superficial analysis of the information, no in-depth. And because of those, you have a loss of opportunity to influence and change practice. Because your role as a journalist, what is it? To entertain, inform, communicate. But I also believe that the fourth should transform. So it should not just be informing, communicating, etc. We have to transform. So I put it to you. You look at all the media web pages and point to one of those web pages. You have business, you have sports, you have what? Politics. Have you seen one with environment? Meanwhile, this whole country depends on its natural resources. Climate change, it affects every aspect of our development. When it rains, you cannot come from a breed to Accra because the road is flooded. When the floods come, where does it hit? What type of roofs are ripped off with the storms? Schools, clinics. So already you've hit transportation, health, education. If the rain doesn't fall and you cannot grow your crops or they cannot be harvested, that's agriculture everywhere. Now there's a statistic which has been quoted. This is coming back from 2000, from the NCAP study. This is the Netherlands Climate Adaptation Program. The projection is that by 2080, we cannot grow cocoa in Ghana except as an ornamental crop, because the conditions will have changed so much. Please, don't come and ask me for more information. Go and read the study. It's online. When I was doing my education, there was nothing about online. You go and sleep at online. So, what is the justification for media involvement? The need to inform the people on current events. We need to alert the public on future scenarios. Where are we going? Somebody mentioned reactive versus proactive journalism. We need proactive journalism telling us which direction we are heading. Somebody also mentioned the need to amplify the message. When we're talking about education, we have to talk about values. We have to talk about ideas and innovation. I once did a quick analysis of adverts on TV and found all the adverts were highlighting what I call negative attributes. So you had a nosy neighbor who would be climbing over the wall to look at somebody's rubbish. You have a girl who was blackmailing the brother to give her milk, all sorts of things. Frankly, I hardly watch TV. It upsets me. But you also have a very vital role as a monitor. That fourth estate. You have to monitor government. You have to monitor industry. You have to monitor the public. And you have to monitor the NGO community itself. Now, I was asked to speak a couple of years ago, and I was privileged to share the platform with Sam Okudzeto, who's a very prominent lawyer, who was arrested because of his views. And we had a young man from the audience who said, oh, he wants to emulate him. How can he become Sam Okudzeto version 2? And I told Sam, please, this one I'll take it from what we have. I said, you have to find a cause where you're willing to be arrested for on principle. That makes you a morally upright person. Then you end up becoming like Sam Okudzeto. He didn't like that answer. But sometimes you have to take a stand. Sometimes the choices are not pleasant. Sometimes people will advise you, hey, don't say this or don't do that or otherwise trouble. But if you keep quiet, these are not problems that will be isolated for today. There are problems that will be compounded in the future. So I had a section on ways forward. I know you're going to talk about this, but this is a few of my ideas. There need to be more events such as this. You need to bring in equity and justice into the equation. You cannot just be talking about natural resource management. There are always trade-offs. There are always winners, there are losers. And there has to be some justice. We need African voice. Somebody mentioned the fact that a lot of our messaging is coming from the north. We need an African voice to solve, with African solutions, to solve our African problems. If we don't, we'll always be stuck. We need to look at the issue of stranded assets. Many of the things that we are happily using for our economies, in future will no longer be of such value. I was in Sweden last week, and half the cars are electric vehicles. I believe Norway has only 20% hydrocarbon vehicles now. They're all electric or hybrid. Are we providing incentives for us to import such vehicles or build them here? I saw a recent announcement that we're going to do a factory. But what are we really doing? What we are really doing is we're waiting for 2030, when European countries ban the use of their vehicles that use hydrocarbons. And all the second-hand car dealers in Ghana will say, oh, Jesus. Because they're going to dump all those vehicles, just as they dump their old electronics, and we end up with one of the most polluted places on the planet at Old Fadama. Are we preparing towards that? We even had a ban on overaged vehicles. Now, I believe you can pay a penalty and you can bring it. It's like saying that we have a marriage ceremony, one man, one wife, under Christianity. But it's okay to take a second wife if you pay something. That's not how it should work. We also need to look at nature-based solutions. Because we have nature, let us turn to nature to see how we can solve some of the problems and challenges. We have this trajectory, it's a trend. You see, you start always with data. If you don't have data, you have nothing. But you need the data, you need that. That data will create information. We need to translate that information into knowledge. And that information knowledge part is where media and the journalist comes in. And then we need to use policy to transform that knowledge into wisdom. So until we can move from data to information, information to knowledge, knowledge to wisdom, we'll always be doing business as usual. Now we have artificial intelligence coming in. I'm told there's some reporters who are using ChatGPT to write stories. So anyway, that's another thing for maybe the media people to look at. So to end, you see, we can only function as a country, natural resource management or not, if we treat each other with respect. We need that respect for the views of the farmer on the ground, that he knows what he's been doing, and we can learn from the farmer. We also need to have an atmosphere of trust. Right now, we have such an atmosphere of distrust. You can't, everything you say is then painted with party colors. So if you say there's a pothole outside this place, in fact, there's a very big pothole that I saw I've never seen a pothole like that. It's not even manhole. This is bigger than manhole. If you complain about that pothole, it's a pothole. We're not complaining about the president or minister of transport. We're complaining about a pothole. We've come to the place where we are self-censoring to the extent that media has lost its voice. Whereas you should be the megaphone, the amplifier, shouting out that voice from the public wide to everybody. And with that statement, I now declare that the biannual BIMNEX is duly launched. Thank you.